Hello, Giants fans, and welcome to a new edition of the Valentine's Views podcast here on YouTube. Please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Today, I have a special guest with me. I have Conor Orr of Sports Illustrated here to help me break down the Giants. Conor, thank you very, very much for hopping on, giving us some time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ed.
Hey, anytime. I know somewhere in there after the years you spent covering the Giants, I know somewhere in there's a soft spot for John Mara's organization.
I would say so. I mean, back in the day when you worked at the Star Ledger, you got to go from the Jets beat to the Giants beat, so it was an upgrade. So that was like when you finally made it to the Giants beat, you felt like you made it. So
Well, yeah, there is that, but everybody I talk to from because I don't cover the Jets at all, but everybody I talk to complains about the food at the Giants and says, "Man, the spread the Jets put out, says that's a downgrade. That part's a downgrade."
that's true. The Jets spread is next level, but I would say the Giants, you learn to pack your own lunch. I mean, I was only like 23 or 24 when I took the beat, but that's an important life skill, right? You end up saving a lot of money, learning to pack your own lunch. I mean, during training camp, though, it was good. I remember always getting like subs and I was there this past year, I think, to talk to Brian Dable and a few other people. And I remember going out to the media tent and getting like balsamic chicken breast and like a salad. It's like, dude, where else are you going to get that for the price of $0.0?
There you go. You never complain about free food. You just
No.
don't complain about free food. So,
Yes, I agree. I mean, yes, the Jets do have salmon, but however, all free food is good food.
there you go. So let's talk Giants. And earlier in the summer, you had done a 100 bold predictions piece. I think that ran 100 days prior to the regular season opener. So it's been out there for a little while, and I've been wanting to kind of circle back and talk to you about it a little bit because you had some interesting things in there about the Giants. So there's two parts to this first one that I'm going to ask you about. We're going to talk about the second part later. But you called the Giants a sneaky second place team in the NFC East. It sounds to me, there's a lot of people out there thinking this Giants team is going to win 4 games, going to blow up, going to be a disaster, has the worst roster in the NFL, and all of that. Tell me why you're a little bit higher on the Giants maybe than a lot of other folks.
Well, I think we have to put this all in its proper context, right? Where all the unhappiness around the Giants, I think, stems from fans who, for one reason or another, thought that Brian Dable's first season was this part of the steady ascension and really not a happy accident. I mean, this team should not have made the playoffs. They should not have made the playoffs. I don't, and it's wrong to say that the plan is not for them to make the playoffs, but I think that probably by their own internal metrics, they probably thought that was miraculous and to win a playoff game. And so I think we enter into the last season where my guess is they were probably expecting to have like a top 10 pick. They were probably expecting to be able to chip away at the roster and have this be the season of contention. But now everything's kind of looped around a little bit, right? You had to add some veteran pieces last year in case you got back to the playoffs. You had to do some things out of order. Now I think they're in a good spot where they have a dynamic playmaker. They have 2 good edge rushers. They have maybe the best interior defensive lineman in the NFL now that Aaron Donald is gone, or at least one of the 2 or 3 best. And I think you're going to be a little bit more responsible as a defense. You probably take a fewer chances, and I think that you're probably better suited overall at the quarterback position. So I don't see why not. I mean, everyone thinking that Dallas is going to run roughshod over people this year, I think, are mistaken. And Washington has a rookie quarterback. So to me, all options are on the table here. And Brian Dable, I still think, is one of the best head coaches in the NFL. I think he's borne that out over the last 2 years.
I think it's interesting because you talk about the playoffs being a happy accident the first year, and I think And, tell me what you think about this. I think the Giants and Joe Shane, Brian Dable, in terms of building out this roster, are in a vastly different place in year 3 than they would have been had they not made the playoffs. I think I remember when Joe Shane signed Daniel Jones to the 4-year, $160 million contract that everybody still shakes their head at, still disagrees with, and I didn't think he had a choice. But I asked him, did you expect to be in this spot a year ago? Because that's not how this goes with new GMs who come in with existing quarterbacks and all of that. It's just not how this goes. The quarterback gets replaced after a year. And he said, if I had expected this to happen, I would have used the franchise tag, or I would have used the 5th-year option, and gone that way. So I think he's surprised. I think Dable's a little bit surprised. You agree with me that they're in kind of a different place than where they thought they might be?
Yeah, I think part of it's surprise, and I think part of it is also, I mean, Daniel Jones played his best football under Dable because he was, and we saw it a little bit with Pat Shermer, right? When you started using Daniel Jones as part of the running game, he's going to play better, right? He's going to pick up more first downs. He's going to do all that. But I think the part that was overlooked was probably the fact that Daniel is such a naturally tough kid and always wants to be in the mix that it was only a matter of time before he just beat himself up, And once those injuries compound, it turns you into a different player. And so maybe the miscalculation there was how he might have aged if you really wanted to keep playing him like that. But I have no problem with the contract because it was what it was. It was basically a 2-year contract. It's
Absolutely.
it's like Saints fans complaining about the Derek Carr deal, or even Raiders fans complaining about the old Derek Carr deal. These are 1-year options, and whatever. The Daniel Jones deal was like a 2-year option, right? And I really don't see the problem. That's what a quarterback costs.
Right.
And you
Right.
know,
And I didn't think, coming off a playoff year, coming off the way he played in that playoff game, I didn't really think the Giants had a choice, because they couldn't blow it up after their first playoff victory in a decade. That was the way I thought about it anyway.
I agree with you, and I don't know. I don't understand. I don't know really what was the true bonus, right? Like, that team was never going to be bad enough to lose enough games to get up to the point where, like, they would have been in a territory where, we would have said, okay, maybe they would have taken Will Levis, right? Like, you probably weren't going to have a top 5 pick, maybe. Like, so maybe we're looking at Anthony Richardson and Will Levis, like a toss up between those two. Carolina was always going to do whatever it took to get up to number 1. And I would have been hard pressed to imagine that the Texans would have dropped out of 2 at that point, and I don't think the Giants would have been that bad. So, there's a lot of like revisionist history that goes into it. I mean, I think no matter what, you would have had to have done that with Daniel Jones.
Absolutely. And the other part of your sneaky second place team in the NFC East actually revolves around the quarterback. And we know that this is, Joe Shane has said this is the year for Daniel Jones, kind of to prove one way or the other whether he's going to be the Giants quarterback after this year. The other part of what you said was that you think Drew Lock's going to end up starting a majority of the games. Um, Personally, I don't see Drew Lock as any sort of long-term answer. I see him as a bridge to whatever might come in the future, if that happens. But just your thoughts on Jones and Lock, and why you think it's going to happen that way.
It's funny because after I put that out, I was talking to some people, and they were just like, you realize that, like, Daniel Jones is like a man on a mission this year, like that he is like the attitude, not that there was a bad attitude before, but just this laser focused mentality. They were like, people have never seen him like this before. And so I'm happy to be wrong, because I think that Daniel's a good quarterback and I think he belongs in the NFL. But I do think that, with Dable, there probably is this desire to just, work with someone with, you know, Drew can get the ball out fast. He came from an RPO system at Missouri, and I think there's probably something that you can design for him easier than something you can design for Daniel Jones, where he's consistently getting rid of the ball quick. He's getting the ball to Malik Neighbors or Hyatt or any of your other playmakers, and it's probably a little bit less of a risk factor. With Daniel, he's got to be a part of the running game. He needs to move around. He's got to stay healthy. He's got to see it the right way. There's a lot of if factors where I think Drew is it's similar to what happened with Geno in Seattle, where right offense, right coordinator, right receivers, and all of a sudden, it's not perfect. I mean, Seattle would love to upgrade from Geno Smith. I'm sure. It's not ideal, but it's better than your current options. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I still believe, given the right circumstances, I think Joe Shane and Brian Dable would love to draft their own guy. But, they
Oh, for
tried.
sure. Yeah.
They tried this past year. They decided that guy wasn't JJ McCarthy. They tried to go get Drake May. Didn't happen. But that's the way it is a lot of times in the NFL, where if you're not quite bad enough to be in that position, then you do what you have to get along.
Yeah,
But
I agree. And
yep.
I think part of it too was, I mean, I think it shows some restraint, but it's the reality of having a pretty good head coach, right? Like if I view Dable and Kevin O'Connell in a similar way, where, by the way, both the fact that both of them are interested in Drake May, leads the Patriots to say, okay, well, if these two guys want him, why would I pass on him? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And um, I think it's one of those situations where you're never going to be like, you're never going to be bad enough. Like it's going to not Steelers-esque because that's a sample size that's otherworldly, right? But I don't think the Giants are ever going to be bad enough to land at number one. And if they do, it's going to be hard to justify keeping Dable around. You know what I mean?
Right. Right. You actually, that's another thing you mentioned in your 100 bold predictions. You didn't have Dable winning coach of the year, but you had him coming in second. Um, there's a lot of people who want to push the narrative that Dable's on the hot seat. I'm not sure that that's correct. I'm not sure Joe Shane's on the hot seat. I think John Mara doesn't have an appetite for all of this change that he's been through the last few years, unless he absolutely has to, unless this turns into some sort of 2-15 disaster with a lot of discord and fighting on the coaching staff and all that kind of stuff. So just tell me more about why you like Dable so much.
I mean, I think that, I mean, there's no doubt this is the best offense that the team has had since, gosh, um, I mean, well, probably Ben McAdoo, right? I mean, was Coughlin's coordinator, and then the year that they made the playoffs, right after that, um, I would say Dable's no doubt their best head coach since Coughlin. I don't think there's any question about that. Um, you need somebody who's steeped in the modern offensive system, someone who's amoebic, who's adjustable, and who can coach the quarterback position. I mean, you know, the Tommy DeVito thing was not like, oh, look at this great player we found. This was good coaching, and Daniel Jones having that great year, that was good coaching, and every coach has, whatever you want to deem as their side effects. Nobody's perfect, but I think that the things that we don't like about Dable are easily spun as positives elsewhere. Whether it's that fieriness, you could say that there's a little bit of a staff turnover issue in certain spots, but I would say that this is the smoothest I've seen the ship since Coughlin, and I think Mara knows that. I mean, to me, it would be bonkers to go and fire another head coach before the duration of his contract. That would make it what? That would make it four in a row. That
Mm-hmm.
didn't reach the second contract. I don't think he's trying to do that. I really don't. And that's just me talking, but I think he knows he has the right guy here.
Yeah, I think some of what went on, obviously, with the turnover in the coaching staff, and we see Daboll explode on the sideline and all of that, and I wonder, Dabes has not yet admitted that he's going to call plays this year, but it's pretty apparent that he's going to call plays and run the offense. And I wonder if part of the reason, or might not only be for him to lean into his strength, but that it might keep him from having some of those explosions, keep him from getting in the face of some of his coaches during games, because he's got other things that he's got to do. He's got to focus on running that offense.
I don't know. I think, I mean, just knowing him a little bit and talking to a bunch of people about him over the years, I mean, Brian's Brian, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's going to matter if he's calling plays, if he's got to hold his breath under a tank of water, if he's got to, balance plates on his head. Like, he's going to be a fiery guy, but like, that's why you hire someone like that. Like, that wasn't a secret that came across during the interviews. And I'm sure the Mariners knew people in Buffalo that they could have easily called and gotten that same intel. I mean, he's a fiery person. And until it becomes, cancerous, which it does in some places, like some coaches can't control it and it becomes this issue. But until it reaches that point, I think that the value far outweighs the perceived lack of whatever you want to call it, cordiality or whatever. But also, players aren't dumb. I mean, some people deserve to get lit up on the sideline, and I think that there's a part of them is like good. I
Yeah.
mean, some of these guys deserve to get, not deserves the wrong word, but some players like to see other players get lit up, right? To be held responsible.
Yeah, there are times when it's okay to coach,
Yeah,
to quote unquote coach hard.
yeah,
But I did get a kick out of Daboll. If you saw Hard Knocks the other night, I did get a kick out of Daboll telling Malik Neighbors that he needed to harness some of his aggression, let's say, when things don't go well. And I got a kick out of Joe Shane's reaction to Daboll bringing that up.
yeah, yeah. That was funny. I'm very curious to see what kind of, we'll never see it with all these shows, right? But the depth of the work that they did on Neighbors, and I'm dying to know what was the final kind of couple things that put him over Roma Dunze in their mind. I was very surprised that they took Neighbors, not for any other reason than I thought Rome was a Giants player, a classic Giants player. But I would love to see what was kind of the final tally in there, but I doubt they'll show us that on
Yeah.
Hard Knocks.
I, I'm with you. I would love to know as well. I was in a Dunze guy. I thought a Dunze was the safer choice. Maybe not
Yes.
quite as high an upside choice. Maybe not quite as electric, but you knew from the beginning that the Giants had questions about Neighbors' personality, and I would love to know what it was that finally sold them that that they could work with him. So, but we'll never know. But see, that's your job. You got to go find that out, Connor.
We're working on it. We're
All
working on
right.
it.
They uh another thing that you mentioned in your 100 bold prediction was that and everything comes back to offensive line with the Giants. Um and you said that you thought under offensive line coach Carmen Brasillo that you thought we would see a fair amount of improvement from John Michael Schmitz and Evan Neal. Just talk about that. Talk about the Giants offensive line a little bit.
I mean, Evan Neal, I mean, he was my favorite player in that draft. And, I was kind of alone in that. And I recognize that I don't see things that scouts see on film. And so when I was watching him at Alabama, I was texting people all over the league saying, why aren't the Jaguars taking him first overall? It didn't make sense to me. Like, I really thought he was that good. Now, obviously, we've seen some deficiencies in his game, but I think what we've also seen is like every time he's about to peak, he does get injured, right? And there's some sort of an unfortunate sort of plateauing that takes place afterwards. And I think he's just had a little bit of bad luck, but the frame is there, the size is there, the athleticism is there. and maybe switching that up and giving him an opportunity to work with a new coach fixes whatever's happening between the years, And the same goes with the center too, where I think that um, just watching last year, I think it was just it was just indicative of things being just a little too big, a little too fast, and probably not having enough help around him. I was talking to one offensive line coach in the NFL, and he was saying how people need to stop thinking that offensive line is like a pro ready position. We need to start thinking about this more like quarterback. These guys are just as lost as quarterbacks, cornerbacks, other positions that are stereotypically hard to project to the NFL level, and they're able to mask it. But, really with all the injuries last year, none of these guys had any help. There wasn't a lot there. And so I think with health, with a kind of new imagination, new coach. I mean, he did a great job in Vegas with that group. I thought they played well above their potential. So I think that not the sky's the limit, but I think we should see something closer to replacement level play from these guys,
Yeah, it's interesting. You've talked to rookies, you've talked to second year players, and it's so interesting. I walked up to one of the rookie players with the Giants last year, and I asked him a question about something that was going on, and he said to me, he said, "Man," he said, "don't ask me that." He said, "I'm a rookie. I don't know what the heck is going on around here. I'm just trying to show up every day."
Yeah.
And these guys, they don't know what's going on. They're barely keeping their heads above water, just trying to figure out where to line up half the time. Um,
Yeah.
they don't know what's going on. They haven't even had a full off season because of the way that the way that when the draft is and all of that. So it doesn't matter what position it is. It's very, very difficult to be a rookie in the NFL.
Super hard. And, especially, college coaches, I mean, a lot of times are doing their best in their own respect, right? But a lot
Mhm.
of the times they're not doing these guys any favors because they're hyping them up. They're cleaning up their image, and they're probably running an offense that, I mean, I remember doing a story about this about wide receivers a couple of years ago where they're not even moving and they're probably running like 3 routes, throughout the course of a season, they're not
Mhm.
developing. And if they want to
Mhm.
develop, they have to pay to do that on their own time, So,
Right.
there's a lot of acclimation that goes on here.
This is the thing. You mentioned that, and you talk about wide receivers, and I don't know if your story was about the Tennessee offense or not, but Jalen Hyatt's a great example of that. You watch the Tennessee offense, and if the ball's not going to you as a wide receiver, you don't even bother moving off the line of scrimmage. If the
Right.
ball's going to the other side of the field, you don't even move.
Right.
So what are you learning from that? So that's a very difficult transition. Um, it's why NFL coaches talk about that year two leap. So hopefully John Michael Schmitz will take that, and hopefully Evan Neal will take that, because it would be nice if the Giants don't get sacked 85 times this year.
I mean, it always helps.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, let me finish up, Connor. Let me finish up with this. Just we mentioned Hard Knocks just a little bit. Really interesting. The Giants avoided Hard Knocks forever and ever. This is a different version of Hard Knocks. I think the Giants sort of sought some publicity around their 100th season. Um, just your thoughts on what you've seen so far from Hard Knocks, in terms of, is this showing Joe Shane in a positive light, in a negative light? Just your thoughts on what we've seen so far.
It's interesting. Like I'm so worn out, and my colleague Albert Breer wrote this the other day, and I thought it was really well done. I'm so worn out with all access, in air quotes, like these shows, because we had quarterback last year on Netflix and receiver we have now. And we had, Hard Knocks in season and Hard Knocks preseason and Hard Knocks draft now. And all the teams are doing their own individual version of Hard Knocks, like almost the exact same thing. They're following the same format. And I think the problem is what they've figured out a way to do is to, of course, show it in a positive light. Right? You know what I mean? Like everything can be edited, cut, staged to make it look like we had the upper hand. We knew what we were doing, and so, I think that the teams who fail at that now are are, have no one but themselves to blame. I mean, they get final editing power over this stuff, and I mean, it's not like the Hard Knocks that we came into this with like the 2000 Baltimore Ravens. Like, you go back and you watch that season, and it was psychotic. Like, it was unbelievable to think like we were able to see this. And now, everything's just so polished. And so I do agree that Dable and Shane and everybody is coming off well. I think everyone comes off like they know what they're doing. They're respectful. They're good negotiators, evaluators of talent. But like, if they're not, then someone else needs to lose their job, because
Yeah.
this is Hard Knocks is no longer all access, right? It's like
It's a sanitized version of
it's
access.
borderline scripted. The only things that are surprising in Hard Knocks anymore are injuries, and that's the one thing that we have no control over, right?
Right.
And I'm not tuning in to see, hoping someone's going to get hurt.
Right. Absolutely. Hey, Connor, I always appreciate an opportunity to talk to you. Why don't you let folks know, where they can find you on social media and all of that in case they don't know.
Yeah, thanks, Ed. At Conor Orr on Twitter. I think my name's right there.
There you go.
And SI.com. Subscribe to the magazine like Ed, where you get it. We send it to you in your mailbox. It's like Amazon. It just shows up there, so you don't have to go looking for it. You don't have to go yelling at me that, whatever, I don't have Wi-Fi, I can't read this, whatever, I'm on the train, whatever. We ship it right to your door, and it shows up in the mailbox, and it's great. So
Yes, and I am so glad that things seem better at SI than they did 6 months to a year ago.
Life is good. Yeah, no complaints.
All right, Connor, thank you very, very much. Giants fans, thank you as always for listening. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.